Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review for Rebecca by Daphne Du Maurier. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways.
Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. It seemed to me I stood by the iron gate leading to the drive, and for a while I could not enter, for the way was barred to me. There was a padlock and a chain upon the gate. I called in my dream to the lodgekeeper and had no answer, and peering closer through the rusted spokes of the gate, I saw that the lodge was uninhabited. No smoke came from the chimney, and the little lattice windows gaped forlorn. Then, like all dreamers, I was possessed of a sudden with supernatural powers and passed like a spirit through the barrier before me. The drive wound away in front of me, twisting and turning as it always has done. But as I advanced, I was aware that a change had come upon it. It was narrow and unkept, not the drive that we had known. At first I was puzzled and did not understand, and it was only when I bent my head to avoid the low swinging branch of a tree that I realized what had happened.
The way that I normally structure my reviews is I talk about the plot, the characters, the things that I like and the things that I didn't like, and then I give the book an overall rating. But before I give the book a rating, I do want to discuss some spoiler aspect to this book, just things that, thoughts that I have or things that I liked or things that irked me specifically. So I'm good. Like I said, I'll put timestamps down below for everything so you can skip around at your leisure. Rebecca is known as a gothic classic. It does have those gothic elements. It does have some suspense. It's known also as a romance because there are romantic elements in here. I personally thought of this book as a thriller. I thought that it had a lot of thriller elements to it. So I guess you could call it like a classic thriller with gothic, creepy elements as well as a bit of suspense. So all of that, I would say, describes Rebecca. In this book, we follow a no-name narrator, and she does not come from money, and she is the companion to this wealthy woman, and she ends up meeting a man in Monte Carlo while she is vacationing with her companion, her employer, the rich woman, Mrs. Van Hopper, and she ends up meeting by happenstance Maxim de Winter, who is the owner of Mandalay, and Mandalay is this really, really well-known wealthy estate in England, and he had lost his wife less than a year prior, about 10 months prior, so he ends up meeting our narrator, and he fall in love. And after only knowing each other for a couple of days, Maxim asks our narrator to marry him, and she agrees. They get married kind of on the fly, and he takes her back to Mandalay. Also, our narrator is very young. She's about 21 years old, and Maxim is about double her age. And like I said, he just lost his wife, Rebecca, less than a year prior to drowning. Once our narrator gets to Mandalay, she realizes that she's really not cut out for this life. She doesn't know how to deal with a big household and servants. She doesn't know how to deal with the high society people that are always calling on the house. Not to mention, she's extremely shy. She's not confident in herself. There's a lot going on in her psyche. She has no self-esteem. And then we have Mrs. Danvers, our housekeeper, like lead housekeeper, who is always reminding our narrator that she is not Rebecca, and she is not as good as Rebecca, as pretty as Rebecca, as smart as Rebecca, and can never take the place of Rebecca. So our main character is just going through a lot of trying to step into the shoes of Rebecca and fill that part of Mandalay. And then we have the mystery surrounding Rebecca's death. There are some things revealed that say that Rebecca might not have drowned. She might have been murdered or something along those sorts. So we do have like a crime element to this book as well. So I would say the two main characters in this book would be our narrator, who, as far as I know, has never been named. I never knew the name of this character except when she was called Mrs. De Winter. So that's what I'm going to refer to her as. I do not know her first name. So she is our main character, and to be completely honest, I did not like her. She was very mousy, very timid. She let people walk all over her. She never stood up for herself. I feel like her whole existence surrounded like her husband, which I feel like, yeah, you should love your husband, but you really need something else going for you. You can't just like live and die for someone else. And she just was incredibly dull. Like, she had no interests except for drawing. She couldn't hold a conversation with people, and she really let Mrs. Danvers get to her. And she really let that woman treat her like she was a puppet on strings, and I really disliked that. I really disliked the fact that our main character didn't have a backbone. Now, I will say that towards the end of the book, she did start to get a backbone, and she did start to kind of grow up a little bit. Um, but it just wasn't enough for me to ignore the majority of the book the way that she was. So I was not a fan of the main character at all. Next, we have Mrs. Danvers, who is the housekeeper, and she is definitely not nice. She's very evil, and as the story progresses, we kind of learn the reasons why she is so evil and why she hates our main character so much. And you can definitely tell, yeah, she has these reasons, but are these reasons real reasons, or are they things that she is using to justify her actions? I personally thought she was a little bit crazy. Even though she explained why she did things, it wasn't a good explanation for me. I did not like Mrs. Danvers at all either. She was manipulative, she was cruel, she said cruel things, she sabotaged our main character, she sabotaged the happiness of their marriage. She was just a horrible character. And then we have Maxim De Winter, who is the husband, and I feel like he could have been way more developed. I really didn't have good or bad feelings about him. I was kind of ambivalent. But, I feel like there was just a couple of scenes where he could have stood up for his wife instead of letting his emotions get the better of him. But then we also learn more about him and his relationship with Rebecca as the story goes on, and just kind of like what they were going through and what their marriage was like. And that kind of does garner some sympathy for me as a reader. So Maxim wasn't really a character that I rooted for. I didn't love him, I didn't hate him. He was kind of just there to fulfill the plot, and I wish he had been a bit more developed. Now I'm going to talk about the things that I liked, and the main thing that I liked in this book was the prose. Oh my gosh, does this woman have beautiful prose? Like, she can describe like a picture of a bedroom, and it's like reading a painting. Like, I don't know how to say it. She is just amazing with words and descriptions and figurative language and imagery and word choice. And oh, it was so good. And she definitely uses that gift to create an atmosphere and a mood. So this book definitely has like a haunting, creepy atmosphere. And I feel like her word choice and her prose helped to create that. And it really added to the story. The next thing I liked was the way that the twist at the end developed. So I will be honest, this book was very, very predictable, and everything up until a couple things at the end, I knew they were going to happen. It was just incredibly predictable. And there was, at the end, the way that the events turned out was not really what I was expecting, and I'm really glad that she put that information in there, because if she had not, I probably would have been way more disappointed in this book than I already am. And unfortunately, I have more things that I disliked about this book than I liked about this book. So I already said that I could not stand our main character. I'm not going to repeat all the reasons why. I hated her. She was a horrible main character. She made me want to DNF because she had no backbone, and she was dull as heck. She was so boring. Like, she couldn't hold a conversation with anybody because she like didn't have two thoughts in her head. Oh my gosh, so boring. Horrible main character. And the next thing that I didn't like was the slow plot. So I will say that it took 18 chapters, I think it was, before I was finally like, oh, here's a spark of interest in this plot. There's going to be some twists. And I felt like it was just way too slow developing. And then we had kind of like a snowball effect at the end where everything is revealed and things go really fast. So it's just one of those plots that is slow, 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 slow build, and then quick climax and falling action. So if you like plots like that, then that might be for you. But I will say the good first part of this book, good first chunk, I was very bored. And the last thing I didn't like was, unfortunately, I feel like this book did not stand up to the test of time. So when I read classics, some classics that become my favorite classics are books that stand the test of time. Like, they are still applicable to today. There's things about them that still resonate with us today. And I felt like Rebecca just was extremely dated, and it read as such. And I'm not talking about the language or the setting, just the whole plot, the whole scandal. In 2021, things that went on in this book, I don't want to say they wouldn't be scandalous, because they would be, but it's just kind of like, it's not shocking anymore. There was no shock value. I feel like if I'd read this when the book came out in the 30s, I would have been like, oh my gosh. But in 2021, it's just, it's dated, and I was not surprised, I was not shocked. I don't know. It just fell really, really short for me. Okay, guys, so now I'm going to discuss like a couple of spoilery things. So if you have not read this book and you want to skip to my rating, I'll go ahead and put the timestamp down below. So the first thing that really irked me about our main character was the fact that when she learned that her husband had shot his wife and killed her, she did not blink an eye. She did not care. The first thought was like, oh, he didn't love Rebecca? I'm like, yo, your husband just murdered someone, and that was your first thought, not, oh, I'm married to a murderer. Your thought is, oh, he wasn't in love with his old wife. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't get it. I feel like that totally brought my opinion of her down a notch than it already was. I already thought she was boring and dull and spineless, and now she's like, doesn't even care that her husband murdered someone. Like, I don't care what your wife was doing, that doesn't give you the right to shoot her. One thing I did actually like was the twist at the end, which I mean, I liked it and I didn't like it. And I'm talking about when we find out that Rebecca had cancer and that she wasn't pregnant, because I feel like the author was leading us to believe that she was pregnant and she actually had uterine cancer. And I liked that the author chose that as an exclamation and used it as a scapegoat for Maxim de Winter to get off on murdering Rebecca, because the author made it out like Rebecca killed herself, so she didn't want to go through the pain of dying of cancer. So I really liked that the author used that. I thought it was really clever, but at the same time, it's like, well, if Maxim had just waited 2 months, his wife would have been dead anyway, and they wouldn't have had to go through all of that. So that in itself was really frustrating to me. So I was like, oh, well, that's a cool, clever plot thing to put in there, but oh, why? That means everything Maxim did and everything that they're going through matters not, because she would have died anyway. So I was both glad and frustrated, I guess, which was a really odd emotion. And then the last thing was the ending. So I've heard that some people say that this is an open-ended ending. I don't know. They don't say who burned down Manderley. I assume it's Miss Danvers, because she knew that Maxim killed Rebecca in her heart. She loved Rebecca. You know, that was her ward from when she was a child. She idolized her and she wanted to get revenge on Maxim for what he did. But I don't know. I felt like that part of the ending was just way too rushed. And I don't know. I don't want to say it wasn't satisfying, but it kind of wasn't. So I'm kind of like iffy on the ending. I can infer Miss Danvers burned down the place, but it was never actually stated. All in all, I was actually very disappointed in Rebecca. I had extremely high hopes going in. I thought it might be like a 4 or 5 star book. You know, I've heard so many good things about Daphne Du Maurier, that she just creates good suspense and has awesome writing, which she does. But this book just missed it for me. I was not that engaged with our characters. I was not that engaged with the plot. I found it predictable and dated and nothing really shocking. So all in all, I gave Rebecca 3 out of 5 stars. Let me know in the comments if you have read this book and what you thought of it, and I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye!